why don't we start with I would say a couple of major things that we talked about. Since I have the microphone, you'll be able to hear everything I'm explaining. So one of the issues that we talked about was you going back weighted. So what you want to make sure is throughout the entire routine of yours that you don't do this. So you see sometimes you're kind of tilting backwards, not to the degree that I'm doing it, but you are. You always want to make sure that you portray, the minimum would be vertical, but I will always go for a little more forward poise. And you have to control it because the vertical versus back weighted and forward poised, we're always talking about a upper body. That's really where we're referring to. Now the upper body is obviously attached with the lower part of ours, so we don't create any sort of weird disconnections. So if I'm moving, that's typically happening through my ankles moving me forward. Now see, what will happen is if I move too much forward, I'm going to start falling off my feet. So what I would do is I would do just enough to feel comfortable, and that's really where I feel comfortable. I would like to remind you that the feet should be turned out throughout our dance. I'm sure that that's the way yours were. So you also want to make sure that you don't shift backwards, right? You see, the more I shift back, it kind of contradicts what I'm trying to do. They are dances, as I've already mentioned in the beginning of our practice, such as a waltz, tango, foxtrot, quick step, Viennese waltz. We actually dance this way, but we're not trying to dance those, we're dancing a rhythmical dance. So forward poise, very important, because otherwise you're contradicting your lower part and upper part where they're trying to go. That's number one. The second thing we talked about was understanding of what part of the foot steps. Like, so when you're taking a step, how do we commence the step? And I said that there are two acceptable options. The option that is always my preference is toe, bow, flat. Toe, bow, flat. One of the ways that I'm trying to think of it is that I'm sort of showcasing my foot prior to stepping, right? So I'm elongating, I'm making a pretty foot or whatever, and then I'm taking the step. What you don't want to do is you don't want to heel to commence your step though. So you don't want to take heel leads. Another thing that you don't want is you want to make sure that you're not disconnecting your feet off the floor and then just taking a step. So here's another very much so I would say vulnerable place where if you have an elevation of the ankle and then all of a sudden you're stepping, the chances of you stepping through the heel are so high. That's not a good thing. It's not, you don't want that. So your feet are always kind of meant to be on the floor, except when you have this one, obviously. But every single transitional step of yours, feet should be connected, especially a floor like this. Another acceptable thing for me, because you may encounter doing it sometimes, is going to a flat foot immediately. That's fine. That's fine. It is not my first choice, but it's something that it's very much so. It's a good compromise in between, because you can't always hit that proper step, at least yet. The next thing that we talked about was a base. So I was talking about a range of, I guess, opening of the lower part of mine. So when I think of base, of course, I'm talking about hip flexor below, referring to my legs strictly. So for example, I turn, and then I stop a motion. My personal preference is to have a relatively solid, like good amount of space between my feet. You also have to see what that means in your world, because you cannot hyperextend, because now you're obviously in a position where it's hard for you to get up and move again. So for me personally, this feels comfortable. Like this actually feels very, very comfortable. Now, this is my open position. Yours could be a little different. But what you tend to do is quite often from an open position, quickly you sort of close your feet and then you create a motion. But that more or less kind of kills the momentum of drawing everyone into your story prior to moving again. Before I move on to the next feedback, you ask me if you're in this position and if you're about to move to your left because you have two telemarks and a 1 3-step turn, how do you do that? Well, the first thing that I will do is I'll actually look where I'm going, and that will be the next feedback in a second. From here, the left foot of mine will commence the step. Now, because I'm already in a widely open position, my step would not be giant, but I will commence the step and then I'll move. So, well, I'm a fan of look where you're going first and then go. I will talk about the turns actually right now. The last feedback was look every time before you move and always look where you're going. Some people talk about spotting, and spotting, that will be a sort of a Pandora box where we'll open it at some point and there's so much behind. But the general concept is I always like to sort of look, oh great, I'm going there, so that's where I'm going to look. So I'm going to do, let's just say a step together, put it this way. And I'll pause for a split second. Then I'll look again, and then I'll create the next turn. Step together. And in the end, I have 3-step turn. Step. And I'll pause. And then I'll dance the next piece. What you have to get yourself doing is you're going to have to get far more comfortable with literally pausing for a split second between your movements. You are trying to kind of power them and constantly drive through, but I will highly recommend you stop and then you move again. You stop and then you move again. Better.
And I keep my head that way or stop, look there?
Either would be correct. So you can either continuously looking to the left or you can pause for a split second and then turn it back. I would do the pausing in between. I'm looking there, I'm turning. Stop, there, stop, there, stop, there. I mean, we're talking about 3 turns, not 23 turns. So that should be very much so doable. Are there any questions that I can answer? You have videos of the entire routine. We already talked that next time we'll just chop the piece that you would like to change and we'll change it. We talked about, so when you're dancing your swivels, please look where you're going. Don't look at your feet, right? So ideally when I'm dancing my swivels, I'm trying to get to him in a particular case, right? And him could be a corner unit. So if I'm trying to get to the corner unit, although I'm separating the blocks of weight, I'm still trying to go there. So I don't have to look there and then there and then there. I am trying to get there.
I guess the only question is, I'm still not, I understand what you're saying about this.
Okay.
But I don't understand in what context. Like, where am I?
Throughout. Let me take a look. Honestly, throughout my entire dance. And when I say this, that may very well fluctuate with I stop and I'm vertical. But then when I'm moving, my center commenced me and then I moved. So to answer your question, the forward poise in this particular dance, due to the music, has to be consistent. Although, again, if I stop here, I will go vertical and I'll kind of sit. I'll give them a split second and then I'll create a motion before I move again. But as soon as I start moving, this actually goes there. And what you're doing sometimes is kind of this. Are there any? Yeah. It's habits.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Are there any other questions? Good luck with the weekend. You have some work.